is a tripartite being. Today, we need to come to realize that man has three basic elements. Man has a mind, a body, and a spirit. Most of us spend our time as men investing our resources in developing our muscles. But today, the call is out to develop your inner strength. What do I mean by your inner strength? Life have a way of giving us surprises, and oftentimes there is no physical muscle that can help tame our spirit or control our thoughts. And so we're talking about inner strength. How do you get inner strength? You may read all the books you could find in the universe, but there is something I want to introduce you to in facing life, which I call emotional intelligence. How do you manage your emotions in an environment like your home, on the job? How do you manage your emotions when you are rejected and you are neglected? What do you do when you feel hurt? Do you get angry? When somebody turns their back on you, do you feel like cursing? What's really going on your inside? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, daddies today need to have strength. Strength to stand up against the giants of life. Sometimes life hands you in your hand the pain of unemployment, where you lack financial resources. And so you need to understand that we all need to face the giants of life. Sometimes we have sickness and we don't know what to do. But whilst we are searching for physical strength, outward strength, we need to develop our inner strength. Today we have a special program as we continue to focus on men. We want to launch a special website, a special source, a resource for men in St. Lucia called Man Help St. Lucia. Man Help, STL@gmail.com. You can go there and start giving us your ideas and your suggestions as we embark on the journey of helping men deal with life struggles. You know, ladies and gentlemen, for too long, some women accuse us of putting them away from decision making. When you think of parliament, the ladies are not satisfied. We need more women in the front line. Sometimes we talk about women have been abused over the ages and neglected. But today, it seems to be that all male issues and issues affecting men have been put on the back burner. And so let's face it. I want to say to you today, whatever you're going through, whatever you are faced with, whatever challenge you may have, you may not have enough money to take care of your family, sir. You may not have enough food to put on your table, sir. You may not have the desire to go to work, and you have been going to your job and in and out, you are frustrated. Your dreams have been wrecked, and so you are wondering what tomorrow will bring. I want to tell you, instead of just looking out, why don't you look in and look up? And God, the creator of man, is quite capable of giving you the assistance that you need. Let's face it. Don't give up. Don't commit suicide. Hello? Don't take drugs. Don't turn to alcohol. Right? Don't turn to violence. If somehow inside you are hurting, if you are searching for joy and for peace and for strength, I want to tell you it's available. It begins with prayer. It begins with a good conversation. Learn to share your pain with somebody else. Learn to talk about your problems. And my dear friend, you will get the strength that will take you by the hand to the promised land. You're not alone. And I want to tell you to stay strong, go forward, press on, and keep on working out. Keep on praying, yes. Keep on working out. Keep on trusting. Keep on talking. Keep on believing that one day you will develop that inner strength that matters the most. That inner strength that no one can take away from you. That inner strength that nobody can give you. The joy that no one can take away. The joy that no one can give you. If you need power, you need strength. It's all available. Join me as I sit and talk with Dr. Samuel, a development economist, together with a man who is very concerned about our issues. And let's see if we could have something that we could learn today. Yes, we have a special song for you just before we go into this special interview. It is done by a real man, a great singer, Kendall John. It's called Gendercide.
Hey, brother man, yes, I'm talking to you. 'Cause I don't like to see me brothers forming the fool. For too many years I'm observing this dismal trend. So I'm talking to you to see if this we can mend. Back in the days we used to be tough, making ends meet when things were so rough. Now it's not like it used to be then. I'm telling you straight, we're losing our men. yeah, yeah. I'm witnessing genocide while the women are moving ahead, the brothers are left behind. Loitering on life sidewalk, smoking spliffs. Yes, I'm telling you, men will be next on the endangered list. I'm witnessing genocide, cause the women are taking the leading on the facets of life. While the men are lost, putting handcuffs on their wrists. Their own wrists are say, men will be next on the endangered list. For boys and girls in school, no matter what form, for the boys to excel deviates from the norm. They're more interested in hoops and getting girlfriend, or breaking the rules, or see how far they can bend. The percent of women going to UE outnumber the men 70 to 30. And if things continue as they are, women will outdo their partners by far. Yeah, yeah. I'm witnessing genocide while the women are moving ahead, the brothers are left way, way behind. Loitering on life sidewalks, smoking spliffs. Yes, I'm telling you, men will be next on the endangered list. I'm witnessing genocide, cause the women are taking the lead in all the facets of life. While the men are lost, putting handcuffs on their wrists. Their own wrists are say, men will be next on the endangered list. Now we can't blame only the boys for their dreadful fate, cause the men not doing enough to set matters straight. Instead of being good fathers like they should be, they're out with the boys or running woman freely. Mother alone shouldn't raise a son. Two cords are stronger than only one. If daddy showed attention and care about Junior's death, he wouldn't have to hear. Yeah, yeah. I'm witnessing genocide while the women are moving ahead, the brothers are left way, way, way behind. Loitering on life sidewalk, smoking spliffs. Yes, I'm telling you, men will be next on the endangered list. I'm witnessing genocide, cause the women are taking the lead in all the facets of life. While the men are lost, putting handcuffs on their wrists. Their own wrists are say, men will be next on the endangered list. From the jaws of delinquency, our men we must snatch. I saw a glimmer of hope in the 1,000-man march. We have things in place to guide and help the women. Now I hear talk of a crisis center for men. It's high time for all of us to see two genders make up society. And if one of them should fall behind, the other will feel the strain over time. Yeah, yeah. I'm witnessing genocide while the women are moving ahead, the brothers are left behind. Loitering on life sidewalks, smoking spliffs. Yes, I'm telling you, men will be next on the endangered list. I'm witnessing genocide, cause the women are taking the lead in all the facets of life. Yeah, yeah. While the men are lost, putting handcuffs on their wrists. Their own wrists are say, men will be next on the endangered list. Men will be next on the endangered list. You better check yourself, men. Men will be next on the endangered list. Take care of your children on the endangered list. Treat the women right, yeah. On the endangered list. Please go home at night, yeah, yeah.
Now we're going to do a special interview with Dr. Samuel. Today, God, I say God or the Most High, we know that God made man. There have to be a great designer behind the creation. So it's not accidental. I don't think I came from a monkey, because monkeys still produce monkeys. They don't produce men. Right? And so today we want to focus on manhood and boyhood and what's happening to our boys in St. Lucia and our men in St. Lucia, and to what extent that the leadership that men provide, to what extent the commitment that men provide, to what extent the fear of commitment, how it affects the growth and the development of the family, the community, the church, and generally speaking, you know, what impact, what value do men bring when they are present? You know, ladies and gentlemen, it's always wonderful to know that there is someone you can talk to. There is somewhere you can go. There is a place that you could find a solution. And today, I found a doctor, a special man. Well, he specializes in development economics, and he is an advisor. He will tell you about himself. But more importantly, he wants to be part of the solution. He really wants to identify with solutions, and he wants to see how we could help our country going forward. Back on Track Incorporated, among anything that we have to do, we want to speak to men in our country. And so we have what is called manhelp, stl@gmail.com, so that you can perhaps start to email us. We see it as a database. We're going to do our research. But more importantly, we're looking forward to have manhelp conferences. And we want to speak to men in different strata in our society. We want to speak to men who are in leadership. We are talking about men who are institutions, men who are institutionalized. Today I have with me and the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Samuel. Let us now turn to Dr. Samuel. Dr. Samuel, let's face it. Welcome to Let's Face It. All right, Dr. Samuel.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, it's obvious you're a very handsome guy, cut for television. Am I correct? Tell us about yourself. Who is Dr. Samuel?
Well, Dr. Samuel is a St. Lucian economist.
Okay.
I've been a teacher in an earlier part of my life, and I continue to teach, mind you.
Sounds great.
It's one of my passions.
Mm-hmm.
I have taught at the secondary level and the post-secondary level, and currently also at the university level.
Okay.
I've taught various subjects, including mathematics, geography, music, and other disciplines, economics and finance.
Okay.
I have also been a person with an interest in community life and sports.
Okay.
I've participated in some sporting activity at different points.
You have a few trophies to show?
Yes, I do. I have a few trophies, medals, you know, in track and field, you know, in inter-school and high school sports, as well as inter-campus at University of West Indies.
Wow. And you have developed a love for economics. When did that begin? What inspired you in that direction?
I started at secondary school, actually quite by an accident, really, when our physics teacher was unable to complete the term, and our principal felt we had a free period, and so didn't want us to idle for that period, and just put all of us in economics class. And at the time I didn't know very much about economics, but I did well, and I said, well, that's not too bad. And then when I went on to the A-level college, I did economics, and I've continued since at UE and at the master's level, and finally at the doctorate level.
So you're concerned about social issues and constructing solutions in terms of how our boys find themselves today faced with an almost unsustainable future, or perhaps how our men, our fathers are impacting our young men today is of concern to me and to many people, and also to you. As we think of boys and we think of becoming men, when do you start a conversation like this? I was a boy, obviously. I have to conclude that you were a boy as well. But back then, what we see today, young men having cocaine, young men handling guns, young men dropping out of school, young men sitting on the block, should be very worrying. And I would like you to begin by telling us, how do we begin to look at the subject of boyhood and growth to manhood?
This is a very involved subject. You know, it has a basis, or it's an issue that can be looked at from. It's a very multifaceted issue. I want to focus on what I could say the social trends that have evolved, at least during my lifetime. I've observed, you know, certain trends that are very disturbing in terms of what I call the apparent degeneration of males, or that has been termed male marginalization by one Errol Miller in a book called Male Marginalization of Black Male. And we looked at insights from the teaching profession when we looked at what's happening at schools.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the areas we can start to look at the males. I think at that point, parents typically have their boys by their sides up to about, say, common entrance level and into the secondary level. Thereafter, the male is going through adolescence, and it's a period when a lot of change is going on in the body and the mind. And this change is, characterized by a lot of, testosterone. And the male is learning himself, trying to understand what it is to be a young man.
Okay.
So there's something we call a social definition, or a societal construct of what it is to be male. Sometimes it means you mustn't show your emotions. If you fall, you shouldn't cry. You try to solve your problems, and if you don't do that, you're considered weak. You should be able to learn to drink a lot, and sometimes growing up, you have the whole idea of having, a wide interest in females. Let's put it that way.
Or you take your cue from what you see other men doing around you.
Right. So that
extent,
is the sort of, I wouldn't say the blueprint, but what people follow or they emulate when they see, what they see in the society. Well, it's not only in the Caribbean, but I'm using the Caribbean context for the time being. And so the male goes through that sort of way. And along the way, we have seen a sort of case where the parents give a disproportionate level of liberty and freedoms very early to the male. Less chores to do at home, and you see the disciplines and the responsibilities that females are exposed to early as a result of chores and the close supervision that they get from their mothers and their fathers. You see the boys have higher degrees of freedom to roam a little bit, probably coming later and so on. And so that begins to, affect their development in some unconscious way. And then now what has happened now in the wider society, we have new paradigms have evolved. And these paradigms are about liberalization, social liberalization, where the church has receded, the school has receded, and parenting has been somewhat limited in terms of how parents are able to, for example, discipline. We have debates such as the whole corporal punishment debate, which is seen in very bad light, and we have programs where people are even suggesting that there's a causal link between corporal punishment and criminal behavior, and delinquency and all of that. Although I have a very different view on this.
I want to hear that view. Research has also revealed that poverty is not as necessarily the great factor or the main important factor in terms of delinquency. Research has revealed that the absent father or the lack of proper modeling or good modeling or parenting has resulted more in a boy becoming delinquent or perhaps juvenile delinquency being on the increase. What's your take on that before we return to what you were saying? What's your take on delinquency, mentorship for young boys, the correct one, and what is your take on that?
Without a doubt, the male figure as a guide, to the young male is very critical. And in our Caribbean society, very often, and sadly, we have seen that males have been absent. Although I would have to say that I believe that trend has begun to reverse somewhat. That was perhaps more so in earlier decades. I think more and more men are becoming aware of their responsibilities, but notwithstanding, we are still seeing significant degeneration and decline in the performance of males. And that is most evident at schools, where you see the gap, the gender balance gap is widening, so much that both in terms of dropouts at secondary and primary and secondary schools, and in terms of enrollment figures when we look at graduation and university is as high as 730 at UE.
Before we return there, you spoke earlier on in your preamble about marginalization, male marginalization,
Right.
and men marginalization. What exactly is that? Give us one or two examples in the St. Lucia context, and thereafter we'll take a break.
Well, the term marginalization suggests really that it would seem that the thrust of the systems seem not to cater significantly to the male, who seem to be pushed somewhat to the
Push up or pull.
pushed
Okay.
to the margins,
Of-
perhaps unintentionally.
Okay, what
but-
margins is that?
Okay,
Society or-
take for example, as societies evolve, we become more service oriented,
Okay.
and a lot of the work is in the service industry and not
Tourism
in
referring to?
tourism and things with your hand and soft
Technologies,
skills and
right.
so on,
Okay.
as opposed to what used to be what we might call the primary industries, which were more like construction
Okay.
or agriculture
Hand-driven.
and hand-driven,
Yes,
more manual labor, muscular.
right.
So you have less. The share of that these industries in our economy has
Right.
declined.
Okay.
And so what we might call the domain of the male, where he has a comparative advantage,
Okay.
we have less of that. So he now has to cross over or cross-train into areas that were traditionally outside of the societal construct of the male.
Okay.
So he has to learn to be a waiter, for example, which is girls are already prepared to be waiters perhaps from in the home. And this is one example.
Do you follow the statistic that Dr. Sankarafi recently highlighted in terms of, he was making the point that in terms of the employment, what I call
Statistics.
statistics.
Right.
Do you follow that? Have you have any comment on recently as to, men in the employment arena, the amount of men that are working vis-a-vis the women in certain areas? Any comment as to what you observe in St. Lucia? Whether we have more females at work now, less men? What's your take on that? You have any observation?
While I have not had, I've not been privy to the actual
Report. But historically-
or what was said by Mr. St. Catherine.
Right.
But I would say, based on anecdotal fact, evidence or stylized observations,
Right.
that when you look at our economy,
Right.
tourism is one of the largest
Right.
industrial sector,
Right.
and is dominated by females.
Okay.
The teaching profession is the single largest segment of government paid employees. It's also female dominated.
Right, okay.
And looking elsewhere, all what we might call the domain of men,
Okay.
you see there's significant presence of women now.
Has been reduced.
What I mean is like areas that, you might consider was male dominated.
Right.
You now have women there as well.
Okay.
So when you look at these areas that are dominated by female, it's just the imbalance is significant.
Okay.
So when you add all of that together, I think a picture that is emerging is
That's where
that,
he was women.
that you have more women.
Women, yeah.
And also when you look at services are not everywhere, but whether it's finance, health and wellness services, professional services,
telemarketing.
all of these areas,
Okay.
one might argue women, either by disposition, by training, or otherwise, are innately
Right.
predisposed or have inherent skills that can help them be competitive in these areas.
Okay.
Even a voice, a soft, pleasant voice on the phone
Okay.
is the sort of thing.
Can have an effect on
Dexterity in using a
Have an
keyboard.
effect on you.
Yes, making you feel good.
Yes, yes.
A lovely smile, a lovely
Right,
face.
right.
Dexterity in using a keyboard and that sort of thing. All of these things
right.
are the type of things that actually inherently create advantages for the females.
For the females.
It is not a case of discrimination.
Yes.
It is simply a comparative advantage that they have.
But for a long time, women have been abused, and so women have led the parade. They have been
Yeah.
on the front line fighting for their cause.
Right.
And it looked like men have taken. I don't know. Did the men overlook what the women were saying, or women are just talking? That today you find that women are now overtaking different sectors in our society. Is that a result of the pain or the crisis in their past that pushed them forward to advocate and to find a place in the world? So you find that you hear more about women's issues, women's day, women's this, women that, and so the general communication block in terms of men and women. Women seem to be leading. Am I correct? And why do you think that is happening?
Yes, I think from as early as, or perhaps in the 50s and 60s, there was growing acceptance that there were a number of problems in terms of how women were treated, in terms of rights and opportunities, in school, in terms of violence, domestic violence, and other areas of inequality. And as a result of that, you had in the 1970s something called the United Nations Decade of Women's Rights. And that led to a number of major conferences in the world where the issues of women affairs were looked at. And as a result, we saw the establishment of women ministries with portfolios that focused on women's affairs, which later became gender affairs. But out of that body of work, a number of laws were passed, to correct these imbalances, and really laid the foundation for women to reach their potential and get the momentum we're seeing and take their place in society. That is what you're seeing in evidence. Some argue, though, that there has been an overreach and overcompensation, and in solving the problems that women face, we are creating another set of problems. Because the pendulum has shifted so far to the right in addressing the women's
Because it looks like the spirit of men have been beaten upon. Men have been dishonored to an extent. While they're trying to solve one problem, women get to the point that they say men are dogs, whatever that means, I don't know. So you find out the pain that what I call some manacles have caused to women. There's a real man and there is a manacle. There are men who abuse women, they do all kinds of things. You think that the minority now, the laws are now designed, to almost put the majority in line. Or perhaps you find that the minority of men who do or have or create problems, most men seem to be blamed. You understand?
Yes.
And men have been painted in a certain light that men don't know what they're about. Men are not focused. Men are abusive. You understand?
Yes.
And so women now, hey, you can't get a good man.
Right.
You can't get a good man. So we'll get to that in a little while to talk about how do you identify a good man. You understand? Where do we start, as men dealing with issues concerning, how do we revive ourselves? How do we appear on the stage of humanity? But I think you want to say something before we take a break. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just making the point that sometimes we can have generalizations, stereotypes, and we can actually create problems unintentionally when we pass laws intended to deal with a minority of cases that are now binding on the majority. And then we create another problem. We see it, for example, in how we deal with the resolution of problems, domestic violence, where a male perhaps may have, engaged in some physical activity that damaged a lady, and the matter goes to court, and then they would have built a home together and a family, but the resolution involves him being put away
from his house.
He can't come to his house. He can't complain. Right, and he loses his entire house, and it seems to be fair, and access to his children too sometimes, or the punishment is so sometimes out of proportion, you would say. He's now 50-something years. He's worked an entire life, and with one stroke or one pronouncement of the court, he is now either without a home or having to fend for himself elsewhere.
And that has nothing to do with the amount of women in family court or the amount of women that are magistrates. You think that it might just be a bad day for that man catching up with a magistrate who is...
I'm not sure. It might just be the laws.
Let's think about that. But at this point in time, we'll take a break and we'll return.
But you need a block that is solid as a rock. Building standing tall, stand the test of time. You got a rock solid block, the best in stock. The rock solid block is solid as a rock. Rock solid block will rock you, will rock you.
Rock solid blocks are built with uniform precision for fast, easy, and perfect installation, giving years of solid, dependable structures, standing as solid as a rock.
Rock solid block, solid as a rock, solid as a rock.
Rock solid solid blocks. The name says it all. Another breakthrough product from Wilrock. Visit us at wilrock.com.
It is quite clear to me, Dr. Samuel, that when you look at throughout the corridors of our university, we see a lot of women trying to acquire an education, believing that when they leave university, they will get a great job. But sometimes, after university, they want to settle down and they encounter problems. And sometimes they come up with, or perhaps they face men who, in my mind, don't deserve as much attention as they should. What is your take on that?
First of all, it's a very difficult situation to understand because it seemed to be counterintuitive at the surface. Right. But I think sometimes we say men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Right. Women see things sometimes through different lenses mentally. And sometimes popularity, or sometimes they tell you he listens, notwithstanding his garb and how he looks. And sometimes the women tend to be attracted to the non-conformist. The guy that seems to be...
That's a big word, non-conformist.
He doesn't conform with society. He seems to be a little radical. Okay. He's a little more interesting. Okay. He stands, like at schools, for example. Okay. The very bright girls sometimes are attracted to the boys who are the rule breakers. They are by the office, they challenge the teacher. They are the ones who got their parents' car and without no license and came to pick them up. The guys who are going to break the rules and bring a bottle of wine. Okay. These girls find these people more interesting, and really it seems that they compartmentalize their lives in terms of when is the time for school and when is the time for other things. So they don't want the boy that is going to be telling them about school stuff. Okay. The guy who's the underachiever is not going to be talking about school. He's going to be talking about how should we go away and break the rules, and that seems to
go behind the school,
or whatever, and so on. Right. So very early on, you find that the girls tend to gravitate to the boys that seem to be more adventurous, based on more adventurous. And the boy who's a conformist at school who's doing well, they give them a little pat, but they don't get much more than that. Okay. If they're lucky, they might get a phone number or something like that. Right. They're not the ones going to the prom or the high school fete with them at all. Okay. So from there you start to see women being very accommodating and gravitating towards the man. So maybe the dreadlocks sometimes, right. Sometimes the various studs, the machismo kind of, the power of me. I'm a god, a power unto myself, a god. Right. So I'm standing against the norm, like the Tupacs and all of that. Right. So that continues to be so. But later on now, the women want these guys. Okay. Now there seems to be a case where responsibility and these other things does not reside in the same place. Okay. So later on in their lives now, they want a more responsible person to help them bring up a family and to achieve the goals of a home and other things. And sometimes they find it's very difficult to achieve that with their choice.
So good so far. Focus creates blindness. So what are you saying, that when they are focused on the kind of man
that entertains them,
excites them in the early years, you understand, that cause them to feel like a woman,
they feel excited,
powerful. Yeah. They are focused, but they are blinded up to the kind of future
that they want,
or perhaps that would be necessary in the event they want to have a family. Right. Because the guy before them at the time is not he's not thinking about family. Right. He's just focusing on looks, on shape, you understand?
And fun.
And fun.
Adventure.
right? Adventure, right?
Right.
And he'll do what it takes. He will somersault.
Right.
He will lie.
And it's usually as a result of that lifestyle and carefree nature,
Right.
this individual often, not all the time,
Right.
would not have paid as much attention to his schoolwork or to have the discipline to maintain a job. Usually, you know, is anti-establishment or runs amok of rules
Okay.
and so on, and as a result, does not, you know, do as well.
Now, you know also that these ladies, when their father is absent in their life, to tell them how beautiful they are, to take them on a date,
Yes.
and to remind them that, and those kind of guys come around.
Oh,
the guys,
yes, yes, yes.
What happened? They sweep them off their feet, right?
Yeah.
And then automatically, they get pregnant very fast, or if they get married, they divorce very fast, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And so you see, you have a mix, a combination of the absent father emotionally, and you have a young lady seeking for an image of a good man that her father did not give her, and automatically become a little chaotic, right?
Yes.
Okay. Having said that, what is your take going forward now in St. Lucia? Is there any way that a young lady listening to you, or a man perhaps observing the show, may want to adjust his behavior to have a better future, a more secure future? How do you tackle a situation like that?
Again,
Okay.
there's no you know, one prescription.
Okay.
I would say that there are certain, you know, things that have worked. We should listen to those before us,
Okay.
and you could learn from what you see
Okay.
around. And I mean, we have a whole host of agencies. You have programs, you have teachers, schools that, and you know, the church
Okay.
that are basically trying to guide young people to make better choices.
Dr. Samuel, I think it's important that we look at issues of discipline.
Yes.
Discipline. Sometimes children, boys especially, they do things that requires discipline.
Yes.
Discipline and punishment, are they the same? How would you approach it?
No, discipline and punishment are not the same.
Okay.
Basically, punishment is, as the word suggests, you know, is not for necessarily, it doesn't have a positive intention. You're just punishing somebody. But the discipline is to basically show a link between the penalty or the punishment and a desired behavior. You know, discipline is important to instill discipline in young people with a strong hand. You know, I always say, when I was in the cadet corps, you need to be fair, friendly, and firm. Okay, these are 3 F's.
Right.
You know,
Fair,
friendly, and firm.
Did you get that? Fair, friendly, and firm. This is what Dr. Samuel is saying is discipline.
Yes, it's very important. You need to guide. Just like in our own Christian beliefs, we say, bring up a child in the way that he should, and when he grows up, he shall not depart
You
from
know the
it.
Bible, Dr. Samuel.
Well, you know the word as well.
You know, Dr. Samuel knows the Bible. For a moment, I thought it was just a walking book. You know what I mean?
But that's important. You see, because what you do, you teach principles, you give examples, and you promote the kinds of behaviors you want to be emulated and actually practiced.
Okay.
So that is important, and that requires sometimes some discipline. But what is unfortunate is that a debate has developed in our society about focusing on corporal punishment.
Tell me about
and I mean, I've listened to some
Have you
of
received
it.
corporal punishment?
Of course, yes, I have.
And you did not die?
No, I didn't die, and so on. I think when I listen to those who have been engaged in that debate, they seem to paint a picture of really that represents, I think, a very small percentage.
But they say it's abuse.
Yes, they tend to focus on with synonymous with abuse.
Right.
So they talk about the 1%, or dare I say it, be generous, 2% of parents that may punish with such anger that there is a risk of this physically affecting, abusing the child, and so forth. And that has happened, and we know that. But my question is, how representative is that? I think the vast majority of parents love their children, and they do so when they punish them. It's not because they want to, or they're trying to discipline with some punishment. And actually, in terms of the trends in our society, it is not something that is widely used. So my question is, what percentage of children today get punishment? Actually, I would say, I would venture to say, is a very small percentage, both at schools and at homes.
So are you concerned now that the removal of corporal punishment at school might be consequential, considering the kind of behavior patterns that we see developing in our schools? If not, what you think should happen in terms of corporal punishment in the schools or in the homes?
I think corporal punishment at school or at home should be like a last resort.
Okay.
I do not believe there is need to have it fully removed or illegal in schools.
Okay.
I think sometimes, I mean, the thing about punishment is you feel uncomfortable.
Right,
you feel a sting or burn, and that causes you to react.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's perfect, but I think even in animals you see something that is akin to where the parent trying to guide, and sometimes it may use a paw scratch or something.
Let me do two things, and I believe in, I don't know if you do. Solomon says that a kiss from an enemy is worse than a wound from a friend. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
If your enemy kisses you, hey, be careful. Mm-hmm. But if a friend wound you, you understand, you know he has your best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. But there's also another saying that I love very much. God whispers to us in our pleasure, but he shouts at us in our pain, so that we will hear. You know, there are certain people, if you see you heading towards a precipice in life, whatever the precipice, it may be poverty, it may be sickness, certain habits that have consequences, whatever. You do not see them going towards that precipice of pain, and you say, hey, can you please behave yourself? You have to
be
make
forceful.
It sound, you have to be forceful, you have to make sure that the point is heard, you understand? Emphatically. And sometimes certain people, if they don't feel Dr. Samuel, they just don't hear. I don't know, some people, they need to understand the pain of their poor choices.
The consequences.
Well, that's the way they,
yes.
Right. But they are paying to poor choices.
Yes, you're correct. Because I think what we tend to think is that we could talk our way out.
Yes, too much talk.
To redressing all forms of behavioral problems.
Okay.
We certainly cannot do it.
Okay.
Almost anything that, there's a saying that says, no pain, no gain.
Okay.
Sometimes to achieve, you need to put in some effort, and that effort sometimes can be painful.
Right. Success is no accident.
Right. So, I mean, to think that we can simply just, advocate and encourage and cajole and so forth and speak, that's not enough. Okay. Sometimes we need a firm hand.
Right.
All right.
Sometimes we have to make sure that whatever it takes to show.
And that's at the level of the state too. It's not just parents.
Right.
In terms of our laws, in terms of the behaviors we want to promote, and so forth. And what you want to discourage.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I think we have spoken about men generally and all kinds of stuff, but we need to talk about saving our economy, doing something different, offering hope to our men. All right. Yeah. So take some time to think about it. When we return, we'll dwell there. How do we begin in St. Lucia? We have men on the block, we have men in prison, we have boys at the Boys Training Center, and of course we do not have a vigorous team of men organized sufficiently to advocate on behalf of men. And just maybe we need to start somewhere. I don't believe in match. I don't believe in men matching. I don't know why. Maybe you might convince me why I must match, why all men must come in castries when they have problems and match. I don't know. But let's see how we can start in St. Lucia, where we can do something, how we can do something. We'll have a break at this point in time.
But you need a block that is solid as a rock. Building standing tall, stand the test of time. You got a rock solid block, the best in stock. The rock solid block is solid as a rock. Rock solid block will rock you, will rock you.
Rock solid blocks are built with uniform precision for fast, easy, and perfect installation, giving years of solid, dependable structures, standing as solid as a rock.
Rock solid block, solid as a rock, solid as a rock.
Rock solid blocks. The name says it all. Another breakthrough product from Wilrock. Visit us at wilrock.com.
today we have different institutions in St. Lucia, right? We have Bodley Prison, we have to put our men in our boys in line, we have the Boys Training Center, and of course we did refer to the court dealing with men in a certain way. But we need to fix our men in St. Lucia. We need to address issues that are caused by men. And we don't have to wait for some kind of murder or some kind of rape for us to start doing something. Where can we start, and what are the problems that concern you today?
Yes. Where do we start? Basically, I think we need to start with policy changes at the level at the governmental level. I think we need to incentivize change by promoting, encouraging change. One of the things that we need to do is engage men differently. Right now, we have almost allowed men to think it's okay to just cool out.
All right.
So there's no pressure to conform. It's okay. Some parents allow it. Women are supported by their girlfriends and their mothers and so on, and they just decide or choose to be unemployed. And there's no pressure that they need to be employed. Now, if the state steps in and begins to change that, the young man growing up will know that that's not accepted.
That's a very good point.
In
Because
society.
our men, I don't want to interrupt what you said, but some people just decide to just get up and go and live on the streets. We need to stop
Exactly.
that. We need to put a stop to that. We need to say that if you decide to be a vagrant, you have a lot of consequences you have to brace yourself.
You see,
or decide to do carelessly.
There has to be social re-engineering.
Yeah,
you see, what has happened over the years is that the society has been laissez-faire, which is, to use a Creole phrase, fait ça ouvler.
You speak part of it.
Yes, of course. Where you are allowed almost to self-destruct if you like,
Right.
as long as you don't break any laws.
Right.
So you can, you get frustrated, you leave the job, you decide to stay home, and you exist. But everyone consumes whether they produce or not.
Okay.
And we have what they call a social contract, which is a responsibility that everyone has to discharge their civic responsibility and responsibility as a citizen. And when we treat that lightly and allow people to just exist, we're creating a problem, because it means the working people are carrying everybody else. So think about it. You have miners, you have the working strata of our society, and the retirees. If people of working age, like above 18 or 21, too many of them are left to be unemployed or idle, it means the remainder have to carry the two dependent cohorts of our population, which is the miners and the retirees, as well as them. And it's a disproportionate burden. That has to be discouraged systematically. And the way to do it is this. The state should move quickly to have a machine-readable ID where every citizen of working age carries that ID. A police should be able to stop you at any time if you're idling and ask you to produce your ID. But it must be preceded by a law which says if you are unemployed, you need to report yourself, so the system knows you are unemployed. And then you would go in, and the system helps you find a job, because you have what they call these recruitment agencies.
Like NICE,
Well, not necessarily NICE and NSC, but if you listen carefully, you set up national recruitment centers in the north and the south, which basically looks at what the private sector needs. The private sector would post their manpower needs. A building is going up, the builder or the contractor will say how many masons they need, cement workers, benders, and so a hotel is going up, a restaurant is opening. All of that is a requirement. You post your manpower needs. So the recruitment agencies are constantly trying to match people to the needs of the private sector. So a policeman should be able to stop you at any time and ask you, what are you doing here, and produce your ID card. Checks it in the system to see if you are unemployed. If you are unemployed, you have to report yourself. And if you do not report yourself, there has to be a penalty. No citizen should be able to benefit from, for example, NIS without, actually meeting certain requirements, such as that you've been looking for a job. In some countries have systems like that to discourage idling, because idling is a costly thing. Not only in terms of the fact that they are not producing, but when idle minds are at work, they think of bad things. Because tell me, when boys are on the side of the road, are they learning to sing, or are they learning to play? they're thinking of, unfortunately, they're influenced by the bad apples
Right.
that are changing them to encourage undesirable behavior, which is a cost to us, either in the penal system, the court system, or some other violation of a citizen. So we have to change those things. Another thing we can do is this: national service, promoting that we have a civic responsibility as citizens, that you are part of the solution. Men like to feel wanted, they feel needed, they feel that they're appreciated.
They are honored.
They're appreciated. Now, when you find ways to utilize the energies of people and connect it to their identity, not just the masculine identity, but the national identity as solution. Because one thing we all have that binds us is that we are solution. And even if a man is in prison, he's still a solution. And if you can find ways to utilize, you can direct that energy differently. So what you do in a national service is that you help people be part of the solution. For example, after every disaster, all right, we have damaged roads, damaged houses, and so forth. A national code, a national service would have been preparing people to be part of the response teams to deal with that.
But please, do you know that there is a national
Yeah, I know there's
in the Prime Minister's office? You know about
No, there's the NEMO thing, and there's the stuff that the volunteer group, but that volunteer is a very limited. It's more for functions to support, to provide manpower needs, to support events, and it has its place. But I'm talking about something that is in evidence in other countries, like you have National Guards, National Service, and I have not found any other system that does a better job than a regimental system. Okay, because you can have all of the other things you want in terms of life skills training, teaching people emotional intelligence, care for the environment, all the other things you want, sports, anything, you can do it within the context of a regimental setting like a national service. And the good thing about it, if we have a good national service, there's a potential for having people to be part of international systems like the UN system of helping, and where you get remittances, and a whole is a whole world out there. And so I'm saying we can have a more interventionist government to deal with the problems of idling and basically accepting unemployment and just degeneration. And the other thing I think that's very important is promoting family. Our tax system should promote, like a lot of people are not married. When we go to the States, they become married because it makes sense to be married in the States. The tax system promotes that. So there are lots of interventions that the state can take that would help change the dynamic, and really help to change the society regarding men.
All right. So I heard you said that we need to have a national service, one of a difference that has some kind of what's the term you use?
In a regimental setting.
A regiment setting. I heard you said that
disaster, to help with disaster
I
management.
said that we ought to have some kind of identification.
Yeah, recruitment centers,
right?
And a national ID, a machine readable ID.
Right. Okay. To identify unemployed young men.
Yes.
To make it a little more difficult for them to just
because they escape the system. And they just basically exist below the radar and in the informal society.
And they form gangs.
Right, and these gangs are the breeding grounds for a whole host of undesirable behavior.
So you have predators, certain men who are corrupt.
Exactly, coming and going there. They use those places to basically recruit people to be part of their diabolic schemes and create a lot of mayhem in society.
And then the other good men that we referred to early on that should be able to help.
Yes, can be part of the mentorships.
Okay, so we need to get a specific approach. Likewise, to get our good men on board, mobilize. You understand?
Yes, to be participating more.
And to be available to those men who are tempted to go where the predators are. Am I correct?
Yes, of course. You see, you need to actually dilute these spaces by preventing havens for that sort of activity to take root. And so you need to have, volunteer programs are useful, mentorship programs are useful, but you need these national service where you have throughput. The benefit of it is throughput. It's not going in there and staying there forever. You go in batches.
Okay.
You get that orientation, that training, and you go out in the society.
Wow.
You get better men, better workers, you know, all the things that we talk about. Men that will be better groomed, will be more respectful of ladies, respectful of our flag, respectful of our environment.
Right.
And a real paradigm shift and a change in how men are dressed better. I mean, some guys go out with a lady and I don't know why the lady go out with him, because the guy is dressed as if, you know, he never went home, he never even took a shower, no grooming, and he's well dressed, looking nice.
You know what I'm hearing a lady out there saying right now? GoodMenSolution.com.
The thing is, you know, as long as you have men that are, you know, well put together in terms of you promote the right values, understand, you know, you need to be responsible in terms of taking care of your children, and you know, and having some care and pride in yourself, and in your country. I think that will go a long way, because right now I think that we need to look at what's happening in our city. As you cross the streets, you are just faced with so many mendicants, so many bums, you might call them, degenerates, coming in begging and you know, harassing.
You know, this week,
a
guy asked me for $2, and because I told him I don't have the $2, another guy is upset with me. That's an addictive behavior.
Yes.
That's an addiction that people have on the streets, that some of us who are giving people money on the streets ought to be mindful. Those individuals are interested in making a day's salary by begging, and they're not interested in changing their behavior.
Exactly.
And we have to be mindful of that. I mean, if somebody is asking you for something on the streets, tell them, fine. Why don't you go to Turning Point? There might be a situation where you might have an addiction, you need help. These guys don't want to go to Turning Point. These guys don't want to work. These guys don't even want counseling. All they want to do, they move on to another person to beg. And I think that's very serious. But, you know, ladies and gentlemen, before Mr. Dr. Samuel give us his departing words, I want to let you know that you ought to go to ManHelp St. Lucia, which is found at our email address, manhelpstl@gmail.com. Start to post your ideas, send me literature, because today we start this conversation with Dr. Samuel, and Dr. Samuel may know other men out there who want to be part of this program, so that we can be able to get and identify the good men in St. Lucia and save our darling daughters. Mr. Samuel, what do you have to say as we leave this show?
I think this is a very good initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel.
And I'm happy to have been part of it, at least to lend my thoughts to this. It's we have a serious problem. We face a serious challenge in St. Lucia, and I could tell you some other parts of the Caribbean as well. It's affecting us in many ways. It's affecting our social harmony. It's affecting our productivity, and basically affecting us, the country, in many ways. The cost of, prisons and other things like, time in court and all of these things is a drag on the society and a lot of pain on families. And so we have to say enough is enough, and we must stand up and find interventions and encourage our governments to pass the necessary legislation, set up the necessary institutions, provide the resources needed to begin to save our people. Because if we really want to have development, it has to be people-centered, and that means dealing with our lagging men in schools, workplace, and everywhere else they may be.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Samuel. Thank you so much. Very insightful, very relaxing and entertaining.
You're welcome.
You know what you're about. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Dr. Samuel. It's a wonderful experience to know that Dr. Samuel is not just an educator, but he has a passion for our men in this country. And I'm so pleased to have had that sitting with him. I hope as we get together as men, don't forget, go to manhelpstl@gmail.com and start sending me, let's face it, start sending me any bright idea, any literature, any idea that you may have, so that perhaps when I meet with Dr. Samuel and other men, we could start coming together and discuss the issues, even right here on Choice TV.